In the distant reaches of the galaxy, where stars shimmered like ancient lanterns suspended in an infinite void, there existed a classroom unlike any other. It was vast and glowing, the walls alive with swirling patterns of light that shifted and pulsed as if breathing. Seated in this classroom were beings from every corner of the universe, creatures with crystalline skin, towering forms made of energy, and others that defied even the wildest human imagination. These were the observers, a collective of advanced species who had spent millennia studying the rise and fall of civilizations across the cosmos. But today was different. Today's lesson was about humans. As the room dimmed, signaling the start of the session, an air of curiosity swept through the assembly. Most of these beings had never encountered humanity directly. Earth was an unremarkable blue dot, tucked away in a forgotten corner of the Milky Way. And yet, something about this particular species had caught the attention of the observers. The instructor, a being of fluid light, whose form rippled with a soft hum, began to speak, their voice echoing in the minds of all present. "Today," the instructor began, "we will explore a species that has defied the odds of their own limitations. A species so reckless, so contradictory, yet so profoundly unique, that they have forced the galaxy to reconsider what it means to survive and thrive. We will study humanity." The word hung in the air like an echo, carrying with it a mix of intrigue and skepticism. A creature composed entirely of mist let out what could only be described as a scoff. Humans? Those primitive beings. What could possibly make them worthy of study? The instructor's light pulsed slightly, a subtle signal of amusement. "Ah, but that is precisely why we are here. To understand not only their survival, but their uncanny ability to defy logic. To crash the very systems that sought to define them." As the instructor waved a tendril of light, the room transformed into a breathtaking display. Planets appeared and dissolved, civilizations rose and crumbled, and battles raged silently in the holographic projections. Finally, Earth emerged, a fragile sphere, spinning quietly in the blackness of space. The projection zoomed in closer, revealing flashes of humanity's history. Early humans huddled around a fire, the building of ancient pyramids, the chaotic fervor of wars, the boundless curiosity of space exploration. Each image told a story of a species that stumbled, fell, and yet always found a way to stand again. Humans, the instructor continued, are a paradox. They are destructive yet creative, selfish yet self-sacrificing, chaotic yet capable of astonishing unity. They are driven by emotions that often cloud their judgment, and yet it is these very emotions that push them to achieve the impossible. To truly understand humans, one must delve into their defining moments, the times when they shattered not only expectations, but also themselves, only to rebuild stronger than before. The audience watched in silence as the projection lingered on a particular scene, a lone astronaut drifting in the blackness of space, tethered to nothing but hope. This species has dared to dream beyond their skies, to touch the stars, even when their own planet was burning. They fight not because they must, but because they believe. In what, you ask? Sometimes they don't even know. But that belief has carried them further than logic ever could. As the instructor spoke, a faint ripple of disagreement ran through the crowd. One of the crystalline beings, its voice sharp and cutting, interjected. "They seem reckless. Their progress comes at the expense of balance. They are unsustainable." And yet, the instructor replied calmly, "They endure." What makes them fascinating is not perfection, it is their flaws. Humans have a remarkable talent for disrupting the natural order, for breaking rules that others accept as unchangeable. They are chaotic, yes, but within that chaos lies their strength. "Let me show you." The room darkened, and a new projection emerged. This time, it was a scene of devastation, a planet-wide crisis. smoke and flames rising from ruined cities, oceans swelling and consuming the land. The observers watched as humans, small and fragile against the enormity of their mistakes, rallied together. They built, they innovated, and they adapted in ways that no one, least of all themselves, had predicted. But just as the lesson seemed to be reaching its point, the image began to flicker. A low hum filled the air, and the walls of the classroom began to shift. The instructor's form trembled slightly, their light dimming. Something was wrong. The observers glanced at one another, unease rippling through the group. Suddenly, the projection was interrupted by a loud crackling noise, followed by a strange, distorted voice. It was human. This is a message to all those who watch us. You think you understand us? You think we are just another species to be studied? Well, you're wrong. We see you. And if you're listening, you've just made first contact. The room erupted into chaos. The observers, beings who had studied civilizations for eons without interference, had never experienced anything like this. How had humans, primitive, isolated humans, managed to infiltrate their classroom? And what did they mean by first contact? As the lights in the room flickered wildly, the instructor struggled to regain control, their voice cutting through the confusion. This was not supposed to happen. But it had. And as the observers stared at the now blank projection, one question lingered in every mind present. What happens when the species being studied turns the tables and starts studying you? The room buzzed with an energy that none of the observers could identify. For beings who had spent eons watching and cataloging the intricacies of countless species, this moment was unprecedented. A human voice had pierced through their carefully insulated classroom, a sanctuary built beyond the reach of any known civilization. How had this happened? The observers were masters of observation, not participants. This was a breach, a twist in a script that had always been theirs to write. The instructor's form flickered uneasily, the once smooth waves of light now jittering with static. They took a moment to compose themselves before addressing the room. This is not entirely unexpected, they said, though their tone betrayed otherwise. Humans are unpredictable by nature. We knew that when we chose to study them. It is their defining trait. But how? Came a voice from a corner of the room. It was deep and resonant, belonging to a towering figure of energy whose edges crackled with sharp bursts of light. How could they have known we were here? This space is beyond their comprehension. They shouldn't even know we exist. The instructor paused, their glow dimming slightly. They shouldn't, they admitted. And yet it seems they do. The room erupted into murmurs, each observer sharing their theories. Perhaps it was a coincidence. Perhaps it was a glitch in the projection. But there was something about the voice, its clarity, its tone, its deliberate choice of words that made it impossible to dismiss. It wasn't a random broadcast that had stumbled across their session. It was a message. Directed. Intentional. A smaller being, its form a soft sphere of shifting colors, floated forward. Its voice was gentle but tinged with concern. If they know about us, what else do they know? Could they pose a threat? The instructor hesitated. Humans are not advanced enough to reach us physically. Their technology is primitive compared to our own, but their strength has never been in their tools alone. It lies in their ability to adapt, to see patterns where others see randomness. It is possible they've pieced together fragments of information and drawn conclusions we didn't anticipate. The observers grew silent, their unease settling over the room like a heavy fog. This was not how things were supposed to unfold. They were the watchers, the unseen chroniclers of the universe. To be noticed was to disrupt the balance of their work. And yet, here they were, confronted by the very species they had gathered to study. The instructor shifted their attention back to the projection, which now displayed only static. Perhaps we underestimated them, they said quietly, more to themselves than to the others. We saw their chaos, their fragility, and we assumed they would remain confined by it. But humans are not like the other species we've observed. They thrive in disorder. It is their natural state. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, no one spoke. Then, without warning, the static on the projection cleared, replaced by an image that sent a ripple of shock through the room. It was Earth. But not the Earth they had been studying. This was a live feed. The planet as it appeared in real time. Swirling clouds covered its surface, and lights twinkled in clusters across the night side, a testament to human civilization. The projection zoomed in, focusing on a single point, a small, unremarkable building on the edge of a sprawling human city. Inside, figures moved with purpose, their faces illuminated by the glow of screens and equipment. It was a research facility, though the observers couldn't immediately discern its purpose. But one thing was clear: this was the source of the message. The instructor's glow dimmed further, their form almost flickering out. "They found a way to trace us," they said, their voice barely above a whisper. "This facility, it is studying us as we study them." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. The observers prided themselves on their ability to remain undetected. Their technology was so advanced, their methods so precise, that no civilization had ever been aware of their presence. Until now. How did they do it? Another voice asked, its tone sharp with disbelief. How could they have breached our systems? Our shielding is impenetrable. The instructor didn't have an answer. Instead, they gestured toward the projection, which began to display snippets of data pulled from the human facility. The observers watched in stunned silence as the fragments revealed the truth. The humans weren't just aware of the observers, they were actively studying them. Their screens were filled with diagrams, calculations, and theories about the observer's nature and purpose. Somehow, humans had pieced together enough information to not only suspect their existence, but to actively pursue it. The instructor's voice broke the silence. "They are reverse engineering us," they said. "They've been intercepting traces of our observations, subtle disturbances, patterns we believed imperceptible. And they've been building a profile." The room erupted again, the observers' voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony of disbelief, anger, and fear. This was a species they had dismissed as primitive, incapable of posing any real challenge. And yet, here they were, forcing their way into a realm that should have been beyond their reach. "They're not just watching us," the instructor continued, their voice growing heavier. "They're learning, adapting. They are doing what humans do best." The projection shifted again, this time displaying a timeline of events that led to the breach. It began with faint anomalies, small disruptions in the observer's systems that were dismissed as insignificant. But over time, the anomalies grew more frequent, more precise, until they culminated in the message that had interrupted the lesson. It was clear now that this had been no accident. The humans had been working toward this for years, possibly decades, and they had succeeded in ways the observers could hardly comprehend. "What do we do?" the soft-voiced being asked, its colors dimming with uncertainty. "If they can reach us, can they stop us?" "Can they?" "They cannot harm us," the instructor interrupted firmly. "Their technology, while impressive for their stage of development, is still rudimentary compared to ours. But this is not a question of physical threats. This is about something far greater. They have broken the boundary between observer and observed. They have forced a confrontation that we are not prepared for." The room fell silent once more, the gravity of the situation sinking in. The observers had spent countless millennia studying other civilizations, documenting their rise and fall without interference. But humans had turned the tables, and in doing so, they had changed the rules of the game. The instructor turned back to the projection, which now displayed the faces of the humans working in the facility. There was determination in their expressions, a quiet defiance that was both unsettling and admirable. "They are not like the others," the instructor said, their voice heavy with a mix of frustration and respect. "They will not stop. They will keep pushing, keep questioning, until they uncover the truth. And once they do, they will demand answers." "But what if we give them none?" the crystalline being asked. "What if we retreat, erase all traces of our presence, and leave them to their own devices?" The instructor's form flickered with uncertainty. It may already be too late for that. They have tasted the unknown, and humans are not content to leave questions unanswered. If we vanish now, it will only fuel their curiosity further. They will not stop searching. The room grew heavy with tension, the observers grappling with a reality they had never considered. For the first time in their long history, they were the ones being studied, the ones being dissected and analyzed. It was a role they were wholly unprepared for, and the implications were staggering. As the projection continued to display the human facility, a new voice rang out, a voice that was calm but laced with urgency. "We must decide," it said. "Do we engage, or do we withdraw? The choice will define not only this moment, but the future of our work, and perhaps even theirs." The instructor remained silent, their form glowing faintly as they considered the question. The observers waited, their collective attention focused on the decision that would shape the course of both species. But before the instructor could speak, the projection shifted again, this time displaying a new message from the humans. "We know you're watching," the voice said, clearer now, more confident. "And we're ready to talk. The question is, are you?" The room was plunged into silence, the weight of the challenge hanging heavy in the air. The observers had spent eternity asking questions, but now, for the first time, they were faced with one of their own. What would they do next? The room was heavy with uncertainty, the silence almost oppressive, as the final words of the human message lingered in the minds of every observer. "We know you're watching, and we're ready to talk. The question is, are you?" No one spoke immediately. The weight of those words was too much to ignore. For eons, the observers had been the unseen force in the universe, always in control, always the ones asking the questions. Now, a species they had dismissed as insignificant had turned the tables. And worse, they had invited them into a conversation, an exchange that the observers could neither predict nor control. The instructor, once a beacon of calm and authority, flickered again, their form unstable, as if even their energy was uncertain. "What do they want from us?" one of the beings in the crowd asked, its voice tremulous with a mix of fear and fascination. What could they possibly hope to gain by speaking to us? The instructor paused before responding. "I don't know," they admitted, their voice strained. "But they have forced us into a position we're not prepared for. If they can breach our defenses, if they can learn how to reach us on this level, we may have underestimated them in ways we never imagined." The projection shifted once more, showing the faces of the humans in the research facility, their expressions a mixture of determination and curiosity. They were speaking to each other, planning something, discussing what seemed like the next steps in their effort to engage with the observers. The tension in the room was palpable as the observers watched, helplessly, as the humans seemed to grow more certain with each passing moment. One of the figures in the crowd, a being made entirely of shifting smoke, stepped forward, its voice low and solemn. "They're playing a game with us. I don't believe for a second that they're ready to talk. They've exposed their weakness, their curiosity, and now they'll use it against us. Humans never do anything without a hidden agenda." Another figure, a shimmering entity of pure light, disagreed. "I'm not so sure. There's something different about them. Yes, they're chaotic, unpredictable, but there's an honesty in that. Perhaps they're not trying to trap us. Perhaps they simply want to understand." The room erupted once more in argument, the observers divided on what to do. Should they engage with the humans directly, as the message suggested, or should they withdraw, leaving them to their futile attempts? The fear of the unknown loomed over every decision, as did the potential consequences of underestimating a species that seemed to defy logic at every turn. The instructor, struggling to maintain control, raised their form higher, attempting to quiet the noise. "We cannot let fear guide us," they said, their voice strained but firm. "We've observed humanity for so long, and in all that time, we've seen the same thing. Humans thrive on challenges. They face adversity, and they adapt. But they also believe in things they can't always explain, things they can't always control." The tension only deepened, as if the room itself was holding its breath. The message had changed everything. The observers were now caught in a paradox. The very act of engaging with the humans, of responding to their challenge, was a risk in itself. But the alternative was just as dangerous. If they ignored the message, if they withdrew entirely, what would the humans do next? They might find new ways to reach them, new ways to challenge the observers, until they did something the observers could not predict or contain. The human voice, once just a fleeting anomaly, had now become the catalyst for something far greater, an unexpected confrontation between two civilizations. One had always been the student and the other the teacher. Now the roles had reversed. The instructor felt the weight of this truth pressing in, and in that moment they realized they couldn't ignore the challenge any longer. The humans had sparked something in them, a realization that their role as eternal observers had always been a fragile illusion. "What if they're right?" a voice from the back of the room asked, breaking the silence. "What if they've already figured us out? What if they know more than we think?" The instructor turned toward the voice, their glow brightening slightly. "That's what terrifies us. They're not just studying us. They're learning. They're capable of thinking in ways we didn't anticipate. If we're not careful, they could disrupt everything." The tension in the room thickened, the weight of the moment hanging over everyone present. The observers, who had once been so confident in their superiority, now found themselves standing on the edge of a precipice. What would happen if humanity, in all its chaotic brilliance, forced them to confront their own limitations? If the humans pushed hard enough, what could they uncover? Could they unravel the very fabric of the observer's existence? The instructor, realizing they were no longer in control of the situation, let out a soft hum of frustration. "We cannot underestimate them," they said, their voice quieter now, filled with a kind of reverence. "We've watched them struggle, fight, and survive. But they've also dreamed. They've dreamed of reaching the stars, of understanding things that are beyond them. And they're closer than we thought." A strange murmur rippled through the room. It was true, in a way that made every observer uneasy. The humans, for all their faults, had an unyielding belief in their potential. They were capable of extraordinary things, not because they were the most powerful or the most advanced, but because they never stopped believing they could be more. It was this stubborn faith that had propelled them forward, even when everything seemed against them. And now, that same faith was reaching into the heart of the observer's domain, challenging everything they had taken for granted. The instructor's form pulsed with a faint glow, signaling a decision. "We can no longer remain passive," they said, their voice firm once more. "We must engage with them. But on our terms. We will not be caught off guard again." The room quieted, and all eyes turned toward the instructor. This was it, the moment of decision. To engage, to face the humans on equal footing, or to retreat and risk losing the one thing that had defined them for millennia, control. There was no easy path forward. Each option carried risks. Each decision would lead to consequences that the observers couldn't fully predict. But even as the decision loomed, a deeper fear settled over the room. If the humans had already figured out how to reach them, what was next? Could they break into the heart of the observer's technology? Could they shatter the barrier that had kept civilizations at bay for so long? The very idea sent a chill through the room, a silent acknowledgement that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and no one, least of all the observers, knew what that would mean. As the projection flickered again, this time showing a live feed from inside the human facility, the instructor's voice lowered. "We are no longer the only players in this game. The humans have made their move. The question now is, will we respond?" And as the figure on the screen glanced up at the camera, an unspoken challenge in their eyes, the room was left in stunned silence. The future of both their civilizations hung in the balance, and not a single one of them knew which way it would tip.